Rocky's gone the distance, won the gold, and stood tall against his most fearsome opponent. There's only one thing left for him to achieve, and that is ending the Cold War. Join us as we discuss Rocky IV, which has more hit songs, more mountains, and more robots than any prior entry. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I must break you.
You can try, chump. You can try. Now, joining us everyone. It's a movie podcast. It's a nice atmospheric night. There's heavy rain outside my window, which is giving me all sorts of nice fall vibes, even though it's still summer technically. But
get a blanket, a nice little cup of tea, curl up.
That's the beauty of it. It's still quite warm, so the breeze of the rain and the wind outside is feeling quite nice, hitting the legs. You know, I've got my shorts on because it's summer. Like it's exactly what I need in my life right now. Is the weather outside. But bit of atmosphere to discuss our next chapter of the Rocky saga. Rocky IV is today's movie. We've done the first three. We're ready for Rocky IV. And we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you warning before we get the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show, please do hit the like button if you're on YouTube. It helps us out a bunch. And of course, you can get some bonus shows from me and David as well as some other things over on Patreon. But I'll tell you more about all that at the end of the show. So yes,
you're just nailing that intro. You've got it down, man.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Praise me as much as you like. I'll never grow old.
You're so handsome.
But Rocky IV, there's a super fighter, an engineered muscle man, a specimen, if you will, from Soviet Russia that is going to fight an American, and may not be Rocky, first of all, more than that in spoilers, but there's certainly this oncoming threat from the outside, and this patriotic duty to prove who's got the best fighters and whatnot. But I'm dodging around where it actually goes, because I don't want to spoil anything. We'll save...
No. Obviously, the A-plot of this movie is Paulie and his robot.
There's a robot, which I think is edited out of the director's cut. I was actually... Right before we started, I looked up what the key changes were. Not so much what he took out, but what was added in. So I've not seen the director's cut. I watched the theatrical cut for this, so did you?
Same.
But I was curious, so I looked up a quick summary of what was different. So we'll maybe talk a little bit about that later.
Okay.
But the director's cut was only a couple of years ago. Stallone all of a sudden renamed the movie to it's like Rocky versus Drago, Rocky IV or something like that. So anyway. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say as an introduction here, because the premise is pretty much all I'm going to give you so far. So we'll just get into it. Obviously, Rocky 3 was a bit of a turn from Rocky 1 and 2. Turned a bit more 80s, a bit more silly, a bit more cartoony with its villain.
Yep.
This, I would say, continues that trend further down the rabbit hole.
If Rocky 3 was like a 30%, a 30-degree turn off of the beaten path, this gets the remaining 150 degrees to just 180 it entirely.
Yes. Well, you hadn't seen this before, so I'm very curious. What did you think of Rocky IV?
So you're right in that I hadn't seen it before, but obviously there are certain things that you just pick up, things you just know about the movie.
There's pop culture. There's gifs. There's a couple of moments that I've seen gift a million times.
Right. I'm pretty sure I know every single one of Ivan Drago's lines that he says in English because there's like 4. But here's the thing. I didn't know that I already knew the entire plot of this movie. Like, beginning to end, there is absolutely no twist. There's no, like, other thing that happens. There's nothing that you're, like, surprised about. The entire plot of this movie is exactly what you think it is, just from hearing about the movie.
To be fair, that's not necessarily a critique of the movie so much, but it's more just that if you've heard of some of it through pop culture, you probably know the whole gist of it.
Right. But like, even when, there's movies like Empire Strikes Back where you know the twist at the end, but you don't know a lot of the plot. You can't figure that out just from the basic instance of how it begins and then where it ends up. There's a lot of turns in the middle that take it different directions. This movie, I swear to God, like, I don't think it deviates off the idea of like the most like pinnacle of 80s sports movies I could ever possibly imagine. And again, not inherently a negative, because it is stupid fun. It is absolutely a dumb fun time, but it did not do anything that was like creatively like, wow, okay, that's nice. I like that they did that. It was dumb fun the entire time.
I think one of my favorite things about this show is that doing these franchises in a regular pace, consistently talking about them after each movie, of course, it really helps notice and helps you like take stock of what the changes are and how things evolve movie to movie. I think when you just either rush through a series because you're just binge watching it, or there's years between the movies if it's a new set of movies, maybe the changes don't. You'll notice them a bit, sure, but I think there's like a level of acuteness when we're doing it like this, where we watch one, we talk about it in depth, so we have some really clear thoughts on it, and we've analysed it, and we've picked it a piece, and then you go to the next one, and it really made Rocky 3's changes stand out. Rocky 4, like, the Rocky fanfare is not in this movie. They never play that bit of music. You don't get the title going across the screen at the start. Instead, it starts with Eye of the Tiger. Instead of the name going across the screen like the previous 3 movies, you get inflatable boxing gloves, one with an American flag and one with a Soviet flag.
They collide and they explode, that's where you get the title. That's, oh god.
But that's not even where you get the title, though. I thought you'd get the title there. And the title comes up when they're showing some Rocky 3 footage. It just comes up in the corner of the screen.
That's
when
right,
we're getting the... Because I think... I don't know exactly what we said last time, but I think... We sort of came to the conclusion we don't expect it to sort of start with showing the end of the previous movie again. It actually did. They didn't show any more of it. You know, it stopped exactly where it stopped before.
I believe my initial thing that I was thinking was like, oh, okay, it might show the end of the Clubber Lang fight. Like, it might do that and then do the freeze frame, and then it would skip over the little epilogue of Rocky and
instead,
Apollo.
David, that was the opening title scene. So all the opening titles came up during that scene.
Yeah, which there's other things I want to get to in this movie, but I swear to God, they only shot like 40 minutes of new footage for this film. Like, they do not have enough to fill a feature film here, and they just pulled from other movies.
That's a bit of an exaggeration, but legitimately, there is a music video in the middle of this movie where it's basically just Rocky remembering the events of the previous 3 movies, and even the first half of this one. And at first, it's fine because he's like, okay, he's driving, he's in his head, he's thinking about everything that's gone through his life recently. But then it keeps going for the entire song, and by about 2 minutes in, you're like, this is just the music video. They could literally just cut this part out and put it on MTV in 1986 or 7, whenever this came out.
I fully expect, if I looked up the music video for that, anytime it cut to Stallone in his car looking sad, the music video version would be cutting to the band playing, but all the interstitial stuff would still be there. And what especially pissed me off about it, though, is that, like, the music video is not telling, like, the story of Rocky. It's not like beginning at Rocky 1 and then working its way through.
Oh, it's bouncing around, yeah.
It's literally taking, like, there's a point where the lyrics say something of like, and looking to the past, and it just shows the clip from Rocky 1 of Rocky picking up a picture of himself young. And it's like, you're just matching the lyrics to the visuals. There's no storytelling here.
Yeah, so there's very little score. There's a little bit of a synthy pulse theme that plays for Drago's like entrances, which is kind of like his villain theme. I was surprised that at the very end it does play a little bit of like the ending theme, but I was surprised because they'd avoided every other known cue from the previous movies up until that point that it actually kind of shocked me they played it. But this movie, because Eye of the Tiger was such a success in the last movie, not only did they bring it back for the opening, they had it playing over the Rocky 3 footage, they decided to have an entire soundtrack of hit songs that they're going to use. And there's a moment when he's training, right? And don't get me wrong, it's not weird that there's 2 training montages for the final fight, because that's actually happened even in like 2 and 3, because there'll be like the one where it's not going so well, and then he'll get motivated, and then there's the real training montage where he's hearts in it, right?
Yep.
But this movie's so funny, because there's a training montage with a full song playing, and then there's like one scene, right? Just one little scene, and then immediately the next training montage starts with Hearts on Fire playing, and again, it's the full song pretty much. So it's just so funny to me how much of this feels like a playlist of songs, and it's like, oh no, we're here to give all these songs montages. We're here to give all these songs like emotional moments to like play around, as opposed to anything else.
And then add on top of that, even when it's not a montage, they had the song "Living in America," which is just Apollo's song in this movie, and it's the whole thing. They play the whole song, and it's just, I don't get it. I don't understand why you make these creative choices if it's not just, we want to sell this soundtrack real bad.
I'm sure the soundtrack sold well. I have to imagine that 1985 is when this came out. By the way, I was double checking just as I was talking.
Here, let me see what it was licensed as, like platinum, triple platinum. What are we?
The album? You see how the album did?
It was certified platinum by the RIAA.
Okay.
And No Easy Way Out reached number 22 on the Billboard, whereas where was the other one? Burning Heart is number 2 on the American Hot 100. So it did well. People listened to it.
Oh yeah. To be fair, I actually like a lot of the songs in this. They're solid 80s songs. If you like the sound of 80s kind of emotional pop, then you'll be into the soundtrack of this, right? You'll be totally into it. So, but it's so different though, because all of the score, there's like, I'm sure Bill Conti, I never noticed his name, but I certainly don't think he did the music or he's credited for it, because it didn't sound like there's a score to this movie, to the point where when it came up with a little bit of score, I'm like, oh, they actually had a composer.
Yeah.
Because it goes long times without any musical score.
Right. I remember there was one sequence, and I'm sure you'll remember where it is, but it used the original Rocky theme. Like, it used
it's the sad version. It's the little piano.
It's the sad version, though. Right, exactly. It doesn't do it as the inspirational side. But yeah, that's the only time I really recognized it as the score coming in. Everything else, honestly, even when it was otherwise score, I thought that it was just like the instrumental version to another pop song, because it was always so synthy and so like involved. It wasn't something that was just in the background.
Actually, the start of one of the songs I thought was more synth score, but then like it sort of kept kicking into more gears. I went, oh no, this is just a song. And then eventually the lyrics started singing, and I was like, oh, okay, this is just a song. I mean, despite all that though, I kind of like it. Like, I have a lot of fun with this movie because it is entertaining. It is like, it's probably got the weakest like Rocky like arc or plot of the movie. Like he doesn't feel like he goes through like a proper change, and given that's what's so good about the first one, and each time it's been a little bit weaker, because even in 3, while it's a bit more 80s, it's a bit more popcorn and whatever, there's still something there at the center that works, right? You've still got that friendship with Apollo that works, and you've still got all these things. This one, it tries to have something. It kind of technically sets something up that he pays off when he's making a speech at the end, but it's kind of thin. It doesn't really actually feel like it all adds up.
No,
that's fine.
This is the first time where he directly says that he went through a change, and I don't believe him.
Yes.
Like, by the time it's in, I'm like, you didn't change it. You just got stronger. Like, that's all we're talking about. You just buffed up. That's it.
Yeah. I agree. It didn't feel like he changed in the movie, but it's entertaining. All the montages are fun to watch. There's some nice visuals. There's some silly stuff, like they buy Polly a robot, and like, I don't know what the idea was here. I believe it's edited out of the director's cut because, regrets were had.
You want to know what the idea was? The idea was, hey, we want to give Polly a love story, but we recognize the fact that like we're not going to be able to follow up on that. So we're just going to get it all done right here, right now. And for whatever reason, it's a robot.
It's so wild because it comes in at the start and you just like, what are we doing here? But then it has another couple of scenes later on where they just basically have it for a running gag, if nothing else. And it's just kind of like, this is wild. At the same time, though, I'm mad at Stallone for taking out the director's cut. How dare you? Like, how dare you erase history like that?
Oh, yeah. No, you got to stand by those things. You can trim them down a little bit, but you can't just say it didn't happen.
It was so funny to me. This is what I was thinking when Creed came out, right? So this movie's so important to like the backstory of Creed because, like, all of the friendship of Rocky and Apollo, right, which is relevant for when Rocky meets Creed's son in the future. It's so funny to think that really good, serious drama is seeded in the silliest Rocky movie. It's the one with the robot. It's so funny to think about, but it kind of is.
Even without seeing Creed and not knowing specifically what comes out of it, I obviously know that Creed is, Apollo Creed's like offspring, his son.
It's not a silly movie though. It's not,
right. But that's what I remember the trailers for that coming out. I don't think it was, I didn't never thought it was silly, but I specifically, as we're doing the Living in America bit, where everyone's just dressed to the heads and toes with red, white, and blue, everyone's dancing around, having fun. I'm like, this moment, the moment that is coming up, without any spoilers, is what triggers that serious franchise to exist. Yes. That's so weird.
It's very strange, but hey, whatever. Sometimes movies history can be funny, okay? Like
I'm just trying to think of any other example where like the dumbest possible thing happens in a movie and then it spins off into like the gritty franchise, and I can't think of any. It's weird, but hey, whatever. That's the way the cards were dealt. Obviously things pivoted a little bit later when Rocky wanted to do Rocky Balboa and whatnot, and then that eventually turned into Creed. But yeah, I mean, this is, like I say, Rocky 3 definitely felt like that we'd moved into the 80s and we had some of that 80s popcorn movie vibe in there, but it was kind of mixed in with some of the other stuff. Here it feels like, no, this is full mid-80s cheesy pop songs and everything that comes along with that. And it's just montage after montage, sometimes gratuitous to the level of like that. I mean, that flashback montage, which, you know, we don't even need context for it. It's just, that's all it is. It's just Rocky thinking about his past and a song plays. That's the whole scene. It's so gratuitous in what it is. There's a line between montage and music video. And the line is very thick. It is not easy to cross that line. And they decided to jump it pretty hard there.
Because the thing is, training montages inherently, like if you have a song over it, right, obviously it's had score over it, but if you throw a song over it, and like they do later on in this one, it kind of feels like a music video, but it works in the context of what it is in the movie, right? So it still feels like it's just a montage in the story as opposed to a music video.
Right.
But that scene with him in the car, thinking about all that stuff, it is strictly a music video that's just inserted into the movie with very little justification.
Yep.
So, you know, and I like the song that was playing, so I wasn't that mad, but it's still, I have to call it out.
That's the thing. Even when it makes like stupid choices, it keeps it fun enough that like I don't mind it so much. Like I recognize that it's making stupid choices, but like even during the robot subplot, like there was no point in it where the robot got too obnoxious.
Oh,
like, there was no point where it like annoyed me as a character.
I popped. When that robot came around the corner, I popped. When Polly's sitting there going, oh, did you get me a car for my birthday? I'm excited. And I'm like, oh no, Polly, you don't know what's coming. And the robot comes wheeling around. And I laughed. I cheered. I was like, yes, let's effing go. This is the best. So it's got a charm. I love it for what it is. Now, admittedly, if I was, I don't know, let's say I was already old enough to appreciate the first Rocky when it originally released, right? And then Rocky 2 comes out a few years later, probably still enjoy that. Maybe I still even like 3. Like, let's say I'm my age now, right? Let's say I'm seeing Rocky 4 at 35, having grown up seeing them as they've been coming out. Am I annoyed at what this movie is?
Let's say you age the same way that Rocky's son does, where it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Okay, yeah, the timeline in this. So, to be fair, they try and actually address it more than I remembered them doing, to be fair. Because they give you a couple of lines that indicate it in 2 different ways. They mention that Rocky and Adrian have been married for 9 years. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting, because I honestly thought when Rocky came home in the car, it was meant to be right after the fight with Apollo at the end of 3.
It absolutely was supposed to be. There's no way that wasn't cut together like that for that reason.
Yeah, it felt like it was. It didn't feel like he was just having another match. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Also, Rocky's still champion, so you're saying that he's been champion for 5 years since the last movie? That feels a bit extreme. That said, though, the son has aged like 5 years, so I guess that lines up with the lines of dialogue.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It absolutely, like, it pulls. I would be fine with everything in this movie that's happening if it weren't for that single line of them saying we've been married for 9 years and the kid being older. And even then, I could take the kid being older. You just tell me like, oh, we recast the kid and like we picked an aged up version. Fine, whatever. I'll just accept the kid's supposed to be whatever age he's supposed to be.
They also say that Apollo's been retired for 5 years, which would imply that he's been retired since they fought Rocky and Rocky 2.
Right.
But
I don't know.
But hold on though.
Yes.
when he fought Rocky at the end of Rocky 2, there was then 3 years between that and the end of Rocky 3, and then it's been 5 years since that, seemingly. So it's been 8 years since the end of Rocky 2. So does that mean Apollo just fought some people for a while, for a few years before he retired?
Everyone was paying so much attention to Rocky during the Clubber Lang fight. He got jealous and got up in front of a camera and said, "By the way, I'm retiring," just to throw everybody off.
It's not perfect. It's not. It does feel like something somewhere didn't add up, and two people didn't talk to each other about what the timeline was meant to be or something. I don't know, but.
And I'm sure it'll be the last time there's any trouble with the timeline, and we're not going to have any more issues in Rocky 5.
I mean, I remember almost nothing about that movie, so I cannot tell you anything.
That's fair.
But we'll find out. So, I mean, we'll get into all the plot and spoilers, but is there anything else you'd like to say or add before we...
I mean, I think we just got to bring up, before we get into it, the addition of Dolph Lundgren as Ivan Drago,
sure, of course,
as a character.
I glossed over the cast because it's all the same people from before.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Dolph Lundgren, this is basically his introduction to, widestream audiences in America plus everywhere else. Obviously, he's not Russian. He's Swedish, I believe, if I remember correctly. But obviously, he looks the part. He's got the physique, all the rest of it. I first knew him from Universal Soldier and maybe a couple other things before I saw this. But this was definitely the first big thing he was in that sort of made his name. Also, maybe worth mentioning is his wife, who kind of comes around and translates for him, as Bridget Nielsen, who I know from Beverly Hills Cop 2, funnily enough. So.
Apparently she was, at the time of filming and release of this, Stallone's wife, and then they divorced sometime after.
Really? Yes. Interesting. That's so... honey, why don't you play my, villain's wife in this movie?
Yeah, I imagined more of just the thing of I'll help out your career. I'm just going to put you in this role here, and you're tough. You can handle it.
Sorry, Bridget, you didn't do so good, so I guess we're getting divorced now.
Yeah. Oh, movie flopped. You're out. Bye.
I don't think it did. I think it did all right. But...
Oh, yeah. No, this movie did $300 million in the box office. It was the most financially successful movie in the Rocky franchise.
Look, if you give a movie to Americans in the 80s about America versus Russia, the Americans are showing up for it.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely.
Right? The patriotic hoorah nonsense of the time period. Same in wrestling, funnily enough. It's just what they banked on until you get to the early 90s, and then all of a sudden the audience went, "No, this is lame, actually. We don't really approve of what the country's doing in other countries right now. We don't want to support all this crap." Yeah. Then things change a little bit, but...
Yeah. And also, just to give some context for how on top of the world Stallone was right then, year 1985, he had Rocky IV come out and Rambo First Blood Part 2. And those were the second and third most highest-grossing films of those years, with a collected almost $300 million just box office gross.
Yeah, he was doing well. Fair to say. And it's so funny because I feel like most of the stuff that I knew him from growing up was stuff in the 90s. So it's not like his career just stopped dead there either. He kept going on to do a bunch of stuff.
But I'm saying, no matter how silly Rocky IV is, it's still... It's not even a roadblock for Stallone. It's not even a dent in it. It's just another step on the way to him doing everything.
Well, to be fair, we've said it's entertaining and fun since we started talking about it. No one's been negative here, really.
No.
Yeah, it's silly, but it's entertaining, and yeah, it was only a couple of years later he had Over the Top, which I've heard. I've never seen it, but I've heard nothing but bad things about. So he did have some stinkers, but
that's fair.
So it's that's interesting. And Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. I thought that was earlier for some reason. I always assumed that was an early movie, but famously he was once asked what the worst movie he was ever in was, and he responded by saying the worst movie of all time is Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. Not just the worst movie he was in, it's the worst movie of all time. So
no, that's fair.
Yeah,
I think, wasn't that the one that Schwarzenegger said that he was going to sign in on just to trick Stallone into getting him on board for it?
Oh, I don't know.
But he never had any intention of doing it.
I mean, they did like to prank each other and mess with each other, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
There's a reason why in Demolition Man it's President Schwarzenegger is brought up, which turned out to actually be kind of pathetic given that he became a governor.
Weird. And that was, I remember everybody was just like, yep, we're going to get that constitutional amendment that allows him to go in after he became governor. I'm like, let's not do that. But yeah, whatever.
Hey, could be worse.
It was worse. We did the worst.
All right, let's do spoilers, everyone. Spoilers for Rocky IV, you have been warned. So, as we said, movie begins with a montage of the Clubber Lang fight from the end of Rocky III, and then it basically just plays that scene with Apollo and Rocky freeze framing at the exact same time, which tells me they're just using the footage from the final edit as opposed to, we're going back to the original footage that we shot and making a new version of it. No. It's just the exact same scene.
See, we ended the last review saying that you didn't remember who won that fight, and so when they started replaying it here, I was like, are we just getting the answer right now?
No,
are they just going to show us who won the fight?
When we were talking about it, I did remember where and when we find out. So, I know when it's coming.
I was just concerned it was happening here because I'm like, damn, they just didn't let that sit at all.
No. They let it sit in the original sort of set of movies. We don't get an answer till Creed, but
fair enough.
So honestly, the movie's a little bit kind of let's just check in with the characters at the start. There's really not much driving force. Rocky just comes home. It's Paulie's birthday. We get the robot, as mentioned, who he's not excited about, by the way. He's like, this is weird. Because I think the robot says, why don't you make a wish, Paulie? And Paulie goes, I wish I wasn't in this nightmare.
Yeah. No, this is horrifying. I have no idea. Stallone looks at it, and I think this isn't even him acting. I think this is him, trying to convince everyone on the cast that it's a good idea. He's looking at it, and he's like, what are you talking? This is great. It's a robot.
Yeah, had Stallone invested in a robotics company or something, and this is the prototype?
I don't know, man. I have no idea. I also love the fact that, they try to pitch it as if it were AI. It actually, it's not just a servant that just, responds to basic queries or whatever. It takes in the situation and then speaks like a person. It sounds like robotic, but the words are human. And all I could think is, when did Short Circuit came out? Was that released in theaters? And did that influence him saying robots are the big thing? We got to put one in the movie.
That may have been by now, but I don't know. But anyway, they set this up. They set up that, the kids, whatever age he is now, everyone's all happy. I wasn't even sure if Rocky was still a champion at this point. It wasn't until later where Apollo just happens to says, hey, it's easy for you to say you're still on top. I'm like, oh, he's still the champion. Okay, thanks for that. But the setup of the story, though, is that Apollo's playing with his dogs in his swimming pool, right? Having a nice happy day in the pool, as you do.
Yep.
And on the news comes that for the first time, a Soviet fighter is gained permission to leave the country and come to the US to fight other boxers, because they basically say, oh, he's the Russian champion, but they want to prove him against other outside fighters, professional fighters.
Yeah, I was gonna say they specifically say that he's amateur.
Yes,
there is no apparently boxing circuit over in Russia, so he's technically labeled as an amateur, despite the fact that he is he will literally just destroy anything in his path.
Is it just because obviously it's the world champion, right? They win. Is it more that boxing's not tied to a specific country, but because Soviet obviously so cut off from everywhere else in this time period, that the boxing league just didn't include that, and that's why he's technically an amateur?
I'm not sure about that, because there is also the point where they say, world heavyweight champion Rocky, but then later on they say that this bout that they have between Rocky and Ivan was not approved by the American Boxing League, which makes me think that they get to decide who has the world heavyweight title. So I'm not sure. I don't know the basics on that, but it feels to me like it's the same sort of way of when someone wins a baseball thing, they're the world champions, despite the fact that no one else plays baseball.
But I think boxers from other countries do compete with each other. Maybe it's just a case of the title moves around, but there's a league, a body that governs it in each country that participates or something like that.
The game Punch-Out backs you up, but everything in this movie says no, so I don't know.
Well, which one do you trust to be more accurate?
Rocky 4, Nintendo. God, this is tough.
So, anyway, like, you know, I think the wife and the trainer on TV are like, oh yes, he is the best. Like, our Russians, you know, will dominate. He'll kill any of your puny Americans that dare fight him. And we want to fight the world champ, Rocky Balboa. And I think one of the things that this movie is clearly trying to get across, but maybe fails to do a little bit, I wish they kind of focused on it more. And this is actually one of the scenes that it says the director's cut adds is an extra scene of Apollo after this pool scene, maybe delving into why Apollo wants to fight as much as he does. But it does get into it, but they could have done a little bit more with it, which is the idea that Apollo... He's feeling like a has-been. He wants to prove himself. He wants to prove that he's still got it. It's that kind of thing where the glory's left him behind, and he's got this thirst to regain it a little bit. He wants to be in the spotlight again. He wants to be in front of the cameras. He wants that again. And,
yeah,
you know, as someone who doesn't watch boxing but has watched, you know, a fair bit of wrestling on and off for a lot of my life, there is so many people who keep coming back, even though they clearly are past their prime and they shouldn't come back. But because clearly there's an addiction to, like, the feel you get when you go out in front of a crowd and you get all this attention and all that. He clearly wants that again. So,
there's
gotta go.
There's a point later on in this movie where, you know, he's already decided he wants to fight Ivan, and Rocky's trying to talk him out of it. He's just like, hey, we're kind of past our prime. Like, we gotta do a thing. But I like the line that Apollo says here, where he's basically saying, like, yeah, well, nobody's lining up for my autograph. Like, basically saying, look, you're still the heavyweight champ. You can still get that recognition. I'm just not jealous isn't the right word, but like, I want that again. I want that fame, and I want that sort of notoriety.
He's not jealous of anyone else. He's not jealous of Rocky or whoever else. This is more just about him needing, like, he's got a thirst to feel that again, and be relevant still.
And I also like the idea that, like, Dolph Lundgren is definitely played up to be the next generation. Even the Soviets say such, that it's like, this is what the future of boxing will look like. This is it. This is going to take over everything. And I like that feeling that the next generation's coming up is making him feel even older. It's making him feel like his generation is completely finished. There's nothing he can do anymore. So that's why he has to prove himself that extra mile.
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do here is they're taking that little jostling back and forth from the end of Rocky 3, where he's like, oh, you move good for an old man. He's like, hey, you know, I ain't that old. Like, it's just a lighthearted little moment between them that this movie takes, like, as an uber serious point and says, no, he's feeling like he's scared that he's old and he wants to prove that he still got it. Like, I never took it as that serious a drive in those scenes from Rocky 3. It always just kind of felt like a bit of light. You know, I don't know. It felt like they took something that was a simple line of dialogue and tried to turn it into, no, this is the entire driving force of the character in this one, which is okay to a point, but it feels a bit forced, I guess.
Without knowing the fallout of that fight, I think that, and I'm just spitballing on both sides here, if he did end up beating Rocky, I don't think that this works. Like, obviously it's supposed to be, theoretically, maybe years have passed between the end of that fight and then this. But if he managed to prove himself over Rocky, who just proved himself over Clubber, like, months earlier, weeks earlier, however long it's been, then it feels like he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone anymore in terms of feeling like he's not up for it. Like, he knows he can beat the heavyweight champ. It just feels like this is more of a fame grab than anything else. On the opposite side, if he lost to Rocky, then I can gather that this would make more sense to be like, okay, he trained this guy and then these overcome him, so therefore he does feel a little bit more like he needs to prove himself. He needs to get out there again and, like, show that he is still capable of taking on random upstarts who think that they're the new hot shit.
Yeah. No comment, because I know the answer. But he tries to kind of package it a little bit as, oh, we have to prove, like, this guy's coming over here and saying that we're not worth a damn, and so, you know, he tries to sell like he's doing it for the country. And to be fair, it does fit in a little bit. You know, his big entrance in the first movie was all, you know, it was all pasted in American flags. He did a whole thing. So it does fit, like, this is his branding. This has always been his branding, is to go pro-America and all that. So, okay, fair enough. But he basically comes and begs Rocky to be like, come on, stand by my side, you know, let me have this fight. I want to do this. Before he gets to you and gets an official match for the title, let him go through me, and if I prove he's a chump, then it's fine, and like that's it. He's washed out before he's even begun. Yeah. And it's interesting, and I almost wish they kind of explored this a little bit more. Actually, is that Adrian kind of gets upset here and says, "No, like you've got nothing left to prove, Apollo." And she gets kind of upset and says, "Look, I care about both of you. I don't want you to get hurt." And I'm like, do you know what? I'd kill for an extra scene of her and Apollo, like, just being friends. Like,
oh, yeah.
Just to show how they've maybe bonded a little bit since Rocky 3, since all this friendship has, like, blossomed between Rocky and Apollo. I just think there'd be something interesting to, like, see there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
As soon as Mickey left the picture, I definitely think it would have been a good idea to show Apollo being just completely folded into the family. Because that was when he gets the phone call from Apollo saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." It felt like this was a normal occurrence. This was just like him calling in for like a checkup sort of thing. This happens like once a week, if even. Like it's a super common thing, and they are just friends now. So I would have liked to see them just having a dinner that has nothing to do with boxing or the plot at all. Just like, have Apollo show up to Paulie's birthday. Have him just there. That would make sense.
That would actually be fun. And then maybe have the whole, like, have them establish that he's like a close friend of the whole family now, and then have, maybe while he's there, have the news thing come on with Drago, and, maybe then propel the plot from there. It would have been
just
nice.
Like, hey, did you hear there was news coming out of Russia? They're sending some boxer over or something like that. Just to like set it up a little bit before the reveal of Ivan himself.
Yeah, it's just something. Because I liked this. I liked her showing concern for Apollo too. I just kind of wish we got a little bit of this connection that they had maybe formed, through training in Rocky 3, maybe because, he was the one helping her husband try to get through all that and all the rest of it. Just have a little scene with them. It would have been nice.
Yeah. Also, during this dinner scene, or whatever you want to call it, the table sit down, we have Apollo just like laying out his plans. He's just like, "Now look, what I need you to do." And then the robot enters the room, and Apollo's just like, "What the hell is going on?" And Paulie has changed the robot's voice to be more feminine, and the robot's like, "You're so sexy, Paulie. You're such a man. I love you." And then it just walks out, and Apollo's like, "Anyway, what I need you to do," and he just continues on like nothing happened.
If there's anything I want to see the director's cut for, is I want to see how this scene is edited. If it's taken out the robot bit, because I want to see how they cut around Apollo reacting.
I took note of it because you told me before that the robot was cut it out. You can see the moment and like hear in the soundtrack where the robot enters the room and Apollo looks over, and then he says "anyway," and then just continues his thought. Like before, like it makes it so easy to cut off. There is absolutely no problem there.
Yeah, just cut to a reaction shot of Rocky or Adrian and then cut back to him, but the audio was still playing. You're done. It's easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny. It's funny just how much Apollo has no time to even comprehend what just happened with this robot. He's just going to go on.
He completely recognizes from like a meta perspective, that is a C plot and I don't need to worry about it.
That has got nothing to do with me. Yeah. Anyway, back to this whole thing. But yeah, there's a private scene with Rocky and Apollo afterwards, but they're actually watching their either first fight or second fight. I can't remember which one it was.
I think it's the second fight.
But they're basically laughing and joking and talking about, "Oh, I should have ducked that one. I should have done this." But and they're having the jokes. And Rocky tries to talk him out of this fight with Drago and says, why, and maybe this is a bad choice. Maybe this isn't about fighting him. Maybe this is about fighting yourself. This is about fighting time and proving that you've still got it. And Creed kind of like poo-poos it and tries to, he's coming across and saying we're weak. I have to do it for us, for the country, for everyone. But Rocky's kind of seen through it, and Creed does the thing that Rocky cannot like resist. Creed says, "Please, as a friend, stand by my side." And Rocky can't turn that down because he's too much of a good guy.
He pulls the Mickey in the last movie where Mickey was like, "You can't do this, Rocky. You can't fight Clubber Lang." And then Rocky's like, "Well, stand by my side regardless." And Mickey's like, "All right. I mean, I will." Yeah,
he does. And it's obviously, anyone who knows this movie knows we're heading towards disaster.
Yep.
But yeah, and it's quite quick. It's not like you get much of a training montage, really. You get a little bit of like it's sprinkled throughout the movie, but you get like senses of like on the news and stuff that Drago like has a team of scientists who are studying like the impact he has on like the sensors that he's hitting and stuff, and there's like genetic like pictograms on the computer and whatnot.
Right. I don't know how true it is, but one of the scientists says, like, the average heavyweight boxer punches at 700 psi, and then Drago throws a punch at a sensor, and it comes as like 3 times the amount. It's like 1800 something. And I'm like, oh, okay, so he's just a Terminator. Like, there's just robots underneath his skin. There's no human way that that's possible.
They're injecting him with stuff. Yeah, it's like he's been cultivated in a laboratory.
Yeah, one of the reporters is like, now there's reports that Russia is using anabolic steroids, and you just see all of the scientists in the room like looking at each other with like shifty eyes until finally someone's like, no, we don't do that. That's stupid.
In Mother Russia, we do not take medicine.
Yeah, and then cut to the ending montage, and we like get multiple shots of needles inside of Drago, clearly saying that he's getting steroids.
Yeah, he's getting jacked.
Mm-hmm.
Jacked up the jacksy. Jacksy's a word for anus in Scotland.
Ah, okay, that went well over my head.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it went over everyone's head. So I explained it.
Thank you.
So if anyone ever says, "Do you want to up the jacksy?"
I'm gonna say, "Hey, have you met my friend Pete?"
I mean, you can say yes if you want, but at least you know what you're saying yes to.
Right. So yeah, the one scene that's in the middle here before the actual bout is the press conference where they are just tearing into Drago and the entire USSR. Like,
what do I like about this is that this felt like a sequel to that scene in Rocky 2 where Rocky was being really casual and cracking jokes and making the crowd laugh, but Apollo was trying to be serious and getting annoyed. I really like this as a sequel to that scene because Rocky and Apollo were cracking jokes together. They're friends now. They're both working the crowd together. It's bouncing backwards and forwards. You know, at one point, they asked Rocky a question like, "Hey, what advice will you give to Apollo here to fight this guy?" And you know, Apollo looks at him all seriously. "Yeah, what you got for me, Stallion?" And Rocky's like, "Well, first thing, I think I'll do a stepladder," and everyone laughs, and you know, Apollo laughs. Like everyone's having a good time, and I'm like, obviously, it takes a serious turn because Apollo can't help but keep, you know.
Well, it takes a serious turn. Like Apollo gets offended at the idea because the woman, the wife, is giving just a totally political answer. Like she's 100% just laying down, like, oh well, you know, we're happy to fight against Apollo. He's a well-respected boxer, and it's going to be a good win for Drago. And Creed is like, whoa. You think you're gonna win? What? And I'm like, yeah, I have a feeling that's the whole reason he's fighting, Creed. Like, but he takes actual offense to it, the fact that he thinks he's going to win this fight.
Yeah, and then he gets a bit more serious, starts throwing more like genuine insults. It gets more heated, and they have to get pulled away. But that, you know, then you've got the fight, and it's kind of like, again, it's like a revved up version of Rocky 1 where the pomp and circumstance of the entrances. And I kind of actually, like, obviously Drago, like you say, he's kind of a Terminator here. He's very stoic. He doesn't really react to much. But I did kind of appreciate that despite the fact that he's the villain in this, they give you, like, a little bit of his perspective as he sees, like, like I say, the show that's been put on, right? So he's in the ring that's going to rise up from the, like, underneath the stage or wherever they are, because it's not like an arena. They're in like a big ballroom type place. There's a lot of people at tables, that kind of thing, and this ring comes up. There's all these lights, and you can tell as he's looking around, he's like, "Oh, this is a lot of bollocks. Like, this is a lot of, you know, showmanship and whatnot." And I step in ring, I break you. That is what we do here.
It is literally a parody of American extravagance, like how the Russians portray how just over the top Americans are with like spending and patriotism and stuff like that. It is exactly that, and I can only imagine inside of Drago's mind, he's just like, "Yeah, this seems about right. This is exactly what I expected from America."
Yeah, I feel like, maybe it's just because I'm not American, but for a split second, I'm like, you know what? I kind of sympathize with him a little bit in this scene.
No, absolutely. Like, as an American, I'm like, look, if you're getting Rick Brown to sing "Living in America" as you're dancing wearing an Uncle Sam outfit, like, reconsider what you're doing here.
Yeah, they have a celebrity guest singer who's just played himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's so completely over the top, but that's okay. So I want to bring this up. When they finally get to the last fight, which does take place in the Soviet Union, we'll get to it, but like, they show the whole Soviet like side of things, and they show how they all stand and salute for the Soviet national anthem, and like they have all the flags and all that stuff. Both of them, this and the Soviet part, are very patriotic, and we see how the crowd reacts very poorly to Drago here because he's the foreigner, whereas the crowd reacts poorly to Rocky because he's the foreigner. And I'm wondering if this is going to be like actual subtext that they're trying to work into the film to say that like the two sides are not that different. Like they are pretty much the same in terms of nationalistic fervor here, and it's all just coming down to where you were born that decides which side is the right one.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I mean, I think there's differences in the sense that, you know, like, I mean, and this is maybe just in the portrayal of the movie, but they really portray the Soviets as having not a lick of joy. Everything's very serious all the time. And it's a very typical way to portray them, and especially in the 80s in movies. But by and large, if you're going to do a comical like interpretation of a Soviet, then you're going to do someone who speaks very serious all the time. You're not going to do anyone who, you know, has any kind of light-heartedness or
you're literally going to
them.
have Ivan Drago and his 4 lines throughout this movie.
Yes. So, but yeah, it's really over the top. Like, Apollo is got a hat on. He's dancing to the music as he comes out. He's winking at the audience. He's posing. He's hot dogging. He is completely into it. He is lapping it up, right? And
it feels like this is the intro they would have done for him in Rocky 1 if they had the budget.
Maybe. It kind of works though that it's almost like he's compensating more now. Like before it wasn't compensating, but it was clearly a sign that he wasn't completely focused on his opponent. Here you could argue it's saying that again, but it's also like he's compensating. Like, oh no, this is my chance to be in the spotlight again, so I'm going 500% with all of the fireworks and everything that goes around.
Let it never be said that Apollo is not a good showman, because he absolutely is.
Which is not necessarily anything inherently wrong with that, in terms of as long as it's not distracting him from the actual task at hand.
Right.
But there's an argument that it is, which is why it's an issue. I do like that as they're introducing people and they make a point of announcing that Rocky's there in his corner. There's a nice little bit where, and this kind of shows that he's not jealous of anything, where it's like, you know, they announce Rocky's name and the crowd starts chanting Rocky, and Apollo just kind of like, you know, gives him the hand sign to like, I'll get out your way, take your moment, and Rocky, you know, waves to the crowd and gets his little ovation. It's like, okay, I mean, it didn't feel like, again, it just, maybe that's the point of that, is that it's showing, this is not about jealousy for Rocky's success. This is just about his own demons, his own sort of needs and desires. So, yeah.
I mean, they sold out, obviously you said it's not an arena, but they sold out this venue in Vegas for this exhibition match. Like,
yes,
this is Apollo's time to shine, and I think that he takes full advantage of that. He really wants it to be his, I mean, I hesitate to say swan song because of what happens next, but like ultimately, if this is going to be one of the last boxing things he does, he wants it to be a good show regardless.
Yeah. And what's interesting once the fight starts, and this kind of happens in the Rocky fight as well later on, but it's just how much Drago just doesn't do anything for a while. He just kind of like dodges and whatever, but he does not throw a punch. In fact, he almost just stands with his arms down by his sides at a certain point.
Yeah, he's walking around the ring with his right hand up, just like, it's coming. Eventually, I'm going to get there.
So, you know, Apollo's going in, but it's very ineffective and it's not really doing much. And then just before the end of the round, like maybe the last 10, 15 seconds, Drago just lets loose and starts punching him in the head repeatedly. And it's like, oh, this is bad. Bad enough that when the bell rings and they bring him over, because I think Drago pushes him away actually at the end, so it looks quite vicious. Rocky says, okay, I'm stopping this fight. I can't, like, he's killing you out there.
You got punched like 3 times, and I'm pretty sure you're like seconds from brain dead. Like, you are not going to last another round.
And Apollo says, you got to promise me, Rocky, that no matter what, you don't stop this fight. You don't stop this fight, no matter what.
Can I wanted to call it out in Rocky 2. I think I did call it out in Rocky 2. I forgot to call it out in Rocky 3. The performance from Duke, his trainer, good Lord, this man has never shown such intensity. And yet it keeps building each time.
I know. One of the gifts from this movie that you see all the time is him yelling, throw in the damn towel. Right? It's that moment. It's how just passionate and like just intense he's yelling that phrase.
Like I all the other actors in this are good. They're fine. Like they do a great job of what they're doing. But like that man, I genuinely think he thought the actor playing Apollo was going to die if he did not get involved. It was solely on him.
So there's that little bit of guilt actually in round 2 when, you know, it's when he's yelling throw in the towel and Rocky he's got it in his hand, he's thinking about it, but he's just promised Apollo that he won't do it.
And Apollo, he's stuck in like a grab or something, and he actually looks over at Rocky as he's got the towel in hand. It's just like, don't do it.
But then Drago punches him again in the head. He goes down. He's clearly not moving very much, and everyone kind of rushes into the ring. It's pandemonium.
I mean, he's moving, but it's like twitches. It's not good.
So we get the death of Apollo Creed in the ring, and of course, maybe the most famous line from the movie, the interview of Drago whilst this is happening, and Drago just says, "If he dies, he dies." Do you know, I think I always just remember that as something he says in an interview before the match, and not something that happens after he's already landed the blow that's killed him, and he's slowly dying as he says it.
Here's the thing. If it were said before the match, it would make it feel all that more intentional. It would make it feel like he was going out to kill this guy. But saying it afterwards is just kind of like a indifference. It's a like, yeah, well, he knew what he was getting into when he got in the ring with me. And whatever happens, happens.
I mean, to be fair, Creed's got a history of underestimating unknown opponents. That's what Rocky 1 was about.
Absolutely. 2 things I wanted to bring up just in terms of like technical aspects of this fight.
Sure.
The first is they do the thing that they started doing in the Clubber Lang fight, which is all of Creed's hits sound like a dude just tapping his fingers on a desk, whereas all of Drago's hits sound like somebody punching through a wall. Like they just use the sound design to make it feel that much more hopeless when the fight actually really kicks off. And then the second thing is just kind of a little nitpick on my side. They really should have used a higher frame rate or slow motion camera or something when Apollo is doing his fall to the mat, because they do it in slow-mo, but like
it wasn't filmed in slow-mo.
It wasn't filmed slow-mo, and it just is distracting. You see like it slows down to like 1 frame every like 6 frames or something like that, and it's just you see the motion blur. It doesn't make it look good. I think they should have filmed that with that in mind.
That's fair. I do at least like that they established, and this is kind of almost like a byproduct of them getting to this movie, and they're going to give Apollo this big dramatic death, and that they hadn't really like done enough to really set up his relationship with his wife. Like she was in 2, she had a couple of quick scenes in 2. But so I do appreciate that they tried here to at least point her out before it started. They had the moment where Bridget Nielsen goes up to her and says, "Oh, I hope we can be friends after this fight." Like, oh yeah, I'm sure she's going to be really friendly after your husband kills hers. But obviously that moment is just designed to, okay, that's his wife, you know who she is, she's in the audience. So there is that moment when Apollo's in the ring and he looks over at his wife. You know, so that moment does land, but it would definitely land a bit more if they'd made maybe more of an effort in Rocky 3 to, you know, or actually, what we were saying earlier, if you have that, they're over for dinner with Rocky and Adrian, nothing to do with the plot of the movie, just to establish that they're friends. Just have his wife be there with him, and it's like a double date, you know, they're having a dinner party or whatever, just to establish that she's also a part of everything. We know her for this moment, for when she dies, or when he dies, rather. And like you could do something with that. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I think they were smart to at least point her out so that we could have the moment. It just would have hit a bit more if we'd set her up a bit earlier.
Yeah, I appreciate they had the moment, especially because they set up that she was there. If they didn't, you know, if they just ignored the fact that he had a wife and like, you know, she wasn't at the match or whatever like that, so be it. The moment would still land. But because they had her at the match, I'm glad that they took the time for him to give that little wink and a smile right before he went back in for round 2. Yeah. That being said, because we didn't have the development with her, the only thing that thing did for me, despite I knew it was coming, but even if I were a first-time audience member, that little wink and nod over to the wife is the death note. Like that is the absolute moment of like, you are about to die.
Yeah. I think it's just the right choice, because it would be questioning, why does he not care about his wife in this moment? Why is that not a concern? I mean, it should be.
You could even take the idea of like, okay, it's been 5 years since whatever happened. They got divorced or something. She's just no longer in the picture. You can take it however you want. But because they showed her in the crowd, they had to do that cutaway. There's no other way around it. And then equally heartbreaking is that as he's dying on the ground, the wife is blocked out by all the reporters, and she's not able to like get to him in his final moments.
Yeah, which is a good heartbreaking little moment. That's actually quite nicely done. Because if you remember back at the end of Rocky 1, like Adrian like fighting to get to Rocky for the hug, it's kind of like that, but she never gets there, and that's really sad.
The flip side of it.
So, yeah, I mean, very quickly, you know, we go to the funeral, right? We have Rocky standing there giving a little speech. He's choking up. He can't quite get out anything super meaningful. But he does an interesting thing here where he takes that ugly-ass title belt and he puts it on the coffin so that Creed gets buried with the title. And I was like, okay, that's kind of sweet. I wonder what the Boxing Federation thinks about that.
Rocky has been telling them for 7 years now, you gotta get a better looking belt. And they said, no, not as long as that one's still on Earth. And he said, oh, I've got my chance.
Oh, dear. I will critique the next little part, and it does sound like the director's cut fleshes this out and gives us more in depth to this. I was at first a little confused exactly the sequence of decisions here, because there's like a little montage of newspapers, and it goes to like a press conference explaining what's going to happen. That Rocky's going to go to the Soviet Russia to fight Drago on home turf, and it sounds like, right, and you kind of get this through some context, but it could have been clearer that he gave up the title. Like, obviously he buried the title literally, but he gave up the title of championship. He's not the champion anymore. And I think that he basically, because he's doing this unsanctioned fight, because the American Boxing Association don't want him to do this fight, because it's unsanctioned, to go and do this, he's basically forfeiting his right to be in that league or be the champion or whatever. I think that's what happened here. But they rushed through it so quickly with little explanation, to be honest, that it was a little bit like hard to take all the information in.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like union acting rules sort of thing, where if you're in an acting union, you can't be in like a non-union project or whatever. I forget which way that rolls, but it seems like it's that sort of thing where because he has agreed to do this fight and the league is saying we don't sanction this fight, he essentially has to give up the title temporarily or maybe permanently.
I think permanently.
In order to, because there's just the only thing we get from is two reporters' questions during a montage saying, is this the first time anyone's given up the crown? Rocky doesn't know. And then it's like, doesn't the title mean anything to you? And Rocky says, not until all this is over. And that's all we get. Like, that's all we have to say, that Rocky is no longer the heavyweight champion, which ultimately doesn't impact the plot at all, but it does seem like a big moment in his life that should be fleshed out a little more. Yeah,
him making that choice feels like it should be an emotional beat. Like there should be, and don't get me wrong, maybe it's an easy choice for him because he cares more about avenging Apollo than he does the title, and that's fine. But I want to feel that moment. I want the moment where they say, if you go and do this fight, we're stripping you the title, and then him going, all right then, I'm doing it for my friend, screw you, and walks out. Like, give me that scene. Obviously, that Rocky may not phrase it that way, but give me that scene of Rocky showing undisputedly that this means more to him than the title belt.
Right.
Because it's just one scene. I think it'd be a good scene, and I think it would set up a lot of his motivations get into the back half of the movie.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, this whole sequence, like you said, is just laying out Christmas Day, and they are specifically holding it in the Soviet Union because the wife says that Drago has been getting death threats and stuff like that while they're in America, so they're going back to their home country to do it over there.
Yeah, the wife says that he's been getting death threats and people are calling him a murderer because of what happened in the fight. So, I believe people would actually say that, to be honest. If
Oh yeah, even during the montage, they show the little like magazines on like newspapers, and the headlines say that. Like the headlines are like a murder on the mat or something like that. Like it's absolutely calling him a killer.
They would absolutely spin it that way. I do think this section, though, along with the little montage of newspapers and the press conference, it's a bit clunky as well that right after that, Adrian comes home and there's a bunch of reporters saying, oh, are you going to Russia? Are you going to Russia? And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. No, I'm not going to Russia. Go away. And I'm like, okay, I feel like we could have established that he's made this choice and not told her. But it felt like a very clunky way to find out that he's went and done a press conference. He's made this big choice about giving up the title, about going to fight in foreign territory, and he's not even told her a single lick of it. It feels weird to find out this way in this scene. I don't know. It just felt weird to me.
Am I remembering correctly that Paulie, during the press conference, he also didn't know? Didn't he react? He's like, Soviet Union, what are you doing?
I think so. I definitely remember him reacting to the question, how much money are you making from this fight? And he says 0, and then Paulie's what?
Yeah.
Rocky, you idiot.
Oh yeah, no, so I just saw it there. It says it's in Russia, and then Paulie's like, what are you, nuts? He, like, it doesn't make sense with how it's presented as to how all of this was figured out, and Rocky just unilaterally was able to say, like, yes, here's what we're doing. The League was involved and knew about it, but somehow his wife and Paulie had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, it's a bit clunky, it's a bit weird, and it's not that complicated to understand where the movie's going. Like, you get that really quickly. It's just like, okay, there's a weird transition there where the information could have been dished out in a more succinct way, but whatever. So what's interesting here is that we did a whole plot in Rocky 2. That Rocky was off his game because his heart wasn't in it, and his heart wasn't in it because Adrian had not approved of him fighting again, right? And that was a whole plot in Rocky 2. So it's interesting here that when he goes home and she's at the top of the stairs, which I think is very intentional reframing, because there's a moment in Rocky 2 where he leaves the house and she's standing on the stairs. I think it's an intentional choice to have her on the stairs again.
She has the moral high ground here, so
they're calling back to that scene, and she says, "Why are you doing this? You don't have to do this." Whatever she says, and then I swear to God, and I say that as an atheist, I have no idea half of what Stallone said in this scene, because he mumbles his way through it, and I refuse to turn on subtitles.
That's fair. I had subtitles on, so I was picking it up, but it basically just boiled down to, like, things can't change. People can't change. I can't change, and that's why I gotta go and fight this guy for Apollo.
There was also something in the middle about, like, if he's going to stand in front of me, he has to have the heart in him to do that, and then he'll know. Or so, I don't know. There was like the bits in the middle I was catching pieces of that is like, okay, this sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, here's the thing. This segment here is literally just to set up, like,
him in the car.
Yes, it's to set up the music video, but also it's to set up the ending bit, because this is the part where he talks about, like, people can't change, nothing can change, da-da-da. So when we hit the end of the movie and he says, hey, I did change, it means something. We're calling back, but
he didn't change though. What did he change?
And ultimately, like, it doesn't, like, her vocal thing here is like, hey, you don't have to do this. Like, even if you fight this guy, Apollo will still be dead. Like, you'll be severely hurt because of it. Like, this isn't something that you need to do. And somehow that, like, they skew that into changing, like how they have to change their personalities to do it, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
I think what would have worked for me, actually, is if they just changed a couple of lines here and had her, like, when he says, people don't change, I'm a fighter, all she had to do, and this would have worked with the ending, is all she had to say is, you already changed. Look at what you were when you first met me. Look at what you've went through via those fights with Apollo, and how you become, like, because Rocky did change in Rocky 1. He arguably even changed again in Rocky 2 and 3. He changes the least in this movie. But if her point is just try to convince him that you've already shown that you can change, you've already changed into a better person. Like, at the end when he says, you know, if I can change, anyone changed, you could read that as him realizing that she was right, that he had already changed, that he had went through, you know, like, that would have worked in some level, but, you know.
Yeah. I think ultimately for me, the problem I have is that Rocky's, not motivation, but, like, his arc here is absolutely functionally no different from his arc in the last movie, where there is an opponent who, like, can absolutely kill him and has every reason to, and they have to come to terms with the fact of, like, oh, is it worth the life that you've built? And he says it is. And, like, yes, in Rocky 3, it was more so on the side of he didn't think it was for a while until Adrian said it was. But this movie, like, that's not even a thing that's bothering him, because he still goes out and does it regardless. Like, he's still, I don't know, it just feels a bit too similar to the Rocky 3 plot on Rocky's side.
He's not even conflicted about it in this movie, actually. he's like, he's dead set, no, I'm a fighter, I'm going to go fight him. And nothing ever sways him from that. Which is fine. I mean, really what you're saying is that Rocky 4 just takes the basic structure of Rocky 3 and says, no, villain is bigger, he's badder, he's more vicious, and we're going to add in all this sort of, like, country versus country stuff as well to give it some more spice.
That's honestly, I think the biggest part of it is like theoretically, this is almost a carbon copy of Rocky 3 in a lot of ways. Obviously, there are some minor changes, but even down to the like, oh, your friend and trainer died,
Yes,
because of the guy who you're going to fight, so you're getting revenge in that way. But
last time it was kind of a really kind of unrelated but slight tangential connection to the villain. This movie, no, the villain directly punched the other guy to death, and it's the person you cared about. There's your motivation. You need to beat him.
Yeah, so, and I guess that really just comes back to the general critique we had of this movie is devoid of subtext. Like there is no deeper level here. It just puts everything on the surface and says, yep, Rocky is America, Drago is Russia, and we're going to fight out the Cold War in the ring.
But Rocky gets in the car and the music starts playing. So we get a nice music video of all the big moments from Rocky 1, 2, 3, and even a few from earlier on in this movie. It's a nice little recap. For anyone who went for a bathroom break before this scene, they get a nice little recap of everything.
For anybody who went through a bathroom break during this scene, good choice.
True, yeah, you'd miss nothing of value, really. Even though I think the song's good and it's not a bad music video, it is still just a music video.
I mean, I would argue that this is one of the weaker songs in the movie, only because it's not one that is upbeat. It is very much a calmer, more reflective song.
No, it's a sad moment. It's supposed to be sad.
Right. No, I get it's a sad moment, but like, this is unnecessary to the movie as a whole. You're telling me that this song is sad because there's a sad moment going on, but they wrote this sad moment in to have the song. It's a snake eating its own tail at this point, where it exists solely to exist.
Sure, but like, still, I can't agree with the idea that it would be better if the song was upbeat, because it wouldn't work for the point of it.
No, that's not what I want. I think if you're going to have the sequence, it needs to be a lower mellowed down song. Just don't have the sequence. Like, this exists solely to put it on the soundtrack. That's what I'm saying. There's no reason to have this sequence.
Okay. Still, though, I kind of laughed. Like, as I was halfway through the montage or the music video, I did start to laugh at just how, like, just in your face it is. Like, just how, like, there's no shame here. They're just doing it. And I started to enjoy it on, like, the audacity of, like, these bastards just, like, yeah, we don't care. We're just doing it. Like, I don't know. On some level, I started to enjoy the absurdity of it, but...
Oh, yeah, no. The moment they finished the first verse and then, like, kept going into the second verse, and then, like, I think the guitar solo picked in at one point, I just, like, my brain turned off for a minute, and I did a full reboot, and I came back on, and I was like, oh my God, they're doing the entire song. Like, this isn't the movie edit of the song. This isn't where we do, like, a verse, a chorus, and then we play out the chorus again. This is all of it. And the fact that they do this exact same thing for a training montage later, and then also there was that interstitial training montage, which didn't have a full song, but did still have a, you know, the score, the synth heavy thing going on for quite some time. That's why I go into this saying that this movie, like, it has no other plot to it. There is no, like, turn off where you're like, oh, there's a twist going on, because it all is wasted. All that time they could have used to do that is wasted on montages and the songs. Now, admittedly, they're fun. I'm having fun with them, but like, there's barely enough to fill a movie here in terms of plot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be so negative.
Here's the thing. I'm saying it because I have to mention it as a critique. I have to say that, like, these problems do exist, but I do want to make it clear that, like, it's stupid fun. I am still enjoying myself as these dumb moments are going on. But, like, from a critical perspective, yes, it has severe issues with how it is built.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, like we've said it already. You're kind of like reiterating it. If you're saying it again, then the fact that you're saying it now for like a third time makes me feel like, oh, you're mad about it. Like you really want to get this point across.
That's right. I do want to get the point across because it is like a core problem I have with the movie, but I'm not mad about it. I'm sorry if that's coming. I will take my pills and I will calm down.
Apparently there's an extra scene in the director's cut where Rocky actually says like some sort of goodbye to Adrian before he goes. I've not seen the scene, so I don't know if I'd say it should be there or not, but I will say I do think it works well that he doesn't have a goodbye scene where he just looks up at the window and sees her at the window. I think that actually works in the theatrical cut. Now, admittedly, the content of the scene where he tries to say goodbye and it's maybe not that great might work really well too. I don't know.
Yeah. I just to add on to this scene though, because that's like the last thing that happens as he gets in the car. the other two things that happens is the robot is now nagging Polly, and it's developed this personality of like a nagging wife, and Polly's like, what are you gonna do? And the driver of the car's like, what in the hell is happening here? Like, nobody in this movie understands why it's a plot. Whether it's Apollo or this random driver, no one understands why this robot is around. And then the other thing is Rocky sitting with his kid, and the kid's basically like, are you scared? You're going to go out and fight? When are you going to be home? Da-da-da. And he just has a little heart-to-heart with the kid. But all I could think during this whole sequence was, yep, you get to ditch the kid again. Good job, Rocky.
Well, even at the end when he's saying, I want to give a shout out to my kid out there. Hey, kid. I'm like, do you not know your son's name, Rocky? Because I don't think you've said his name since you named him in Rocky 2.
I, honest to God, think that they, hate the fact they named him Rocky Jr. I think that they wish they could rewrite that and give him a different name, because the fact that they just keep calling him kid makes it seem like they're ashamed of it.
What's so funny is I'm pretty sure in Rocky Balboa, when he's an adult, I want to say that he's picked an alternative name because he doesn't want to be called Rocky Jr. So it's really funny that you're saying that.
That wouldn't surprise me. The actual name that Rocky comes from apparently is Robert, so any sort of Bob or Robbie or anything like that would fit.
I just thought it was Rocky. I didn't realize it came from another name.
Yeah, nah. I didn't know either, but it says that Rocky Balboa's official name in terms of history is Robert something Balboa. So
fair enough. I'll take. I mean, don't get me wrong. It does sound like a cool name, so it is probably a stage name per se or a nickname. Yeah. But I didn't realize it came from Robert. Certainly. Yeah. So yeah, they go to Soviet Russia. They land in the snow. Polly's very upset about the conditions and the weather.
And when we say they, it's Rocky, Polly, and then Duke.
Yes, Duke.
Trainer, because he's now taken on Rocky as an apprentice.
I mean, I'm glad that Duke's there. I think it makes a lot of sense for Duke. One, because it's his long-term friend who's just died, but also him and Rocky built up a bit of a rapport because he was training Rocky in the last movie. It makes all the sense in the world, especially since Mickey's not around anymore, that Duke be the one there. Now, how useful Polly is, other than just he'll do stuff for Rocky, and he'll complain about it, but he'll still do it whilst complaining.
Yeah. For some reason in this movie, on top of the robot stuff, they also made Paulie get really into comic books.
Yeah, it's weird. It's not a big thing. It's just a couple of lines where he's talking about reading comic books, and then when they get to their cabin that they've been given, and there's KGB watching them all the time to make sure they don't stray anywhere, he's like, oh, I hope they give us the comic books. There's no TV aerial. I want to watch the game. Where's my comic books? I'm like, oh, all right, Paulie.
Yeah, I think we said something about this because of the intro to Rocky 3, where all of a sudden it was the Paulie show and then they just threw him away. Every movie makes me feel like they want to get rid of Paulie. They want to have an excuse to just say and Paulie died between movies, moving on, but they just keep bringing him back for whatever reason, but they know nothing about what to do with him.
I mean, I guess he's there for a bit of comic relief, but that's pretty much.
Yeah, it's light. It's very light comic relief.
Yeah. There's a little heart-to-heart between Rocky and Duke that night, but by and large, what I'm really going to talk about here is the two main training montages, because there's two long training montages. One's before Adrian randomly shows up. That's just when I was earlier on when I was saying there's one scene in the middle between the two training montages. It's Adrian showing up and saying, I couldn't stay away, Rocky. I'm with you till the bitter end. And he's like, yeah, baby, and they kiss. And then the second training montage starts. But because it was a full song of a training montage, and it's not like the first one is because in Rocky 3, the first montage was oh, he's not quite getting it, he's failing, his heart's not there. There's a purpose to it, and then he gets revved up, and then the second montage, no, he's into it. This time it's just no, here's the starter training things he's doing, because they're not at a gym, they're at this cabin in the middle of nowhere. Surrounded by snow, he's lifting up farming equipment, he's cutting logs, he's chopping wood, whatever you want to call it. He's running in the snow, he's in a big, sort of fur jacket kind of thing. Whereas it intercuts with Drago, and Drago's in a lab. He's in a gymnasium with machines and scientists, and they're tracking everything he does with computers and all sorts. But Rocky's out in nature. He's out in the real Russia. But
they specifically do the intercut thing where everything Drago's doing in the lab, Rocky's doing the same motion,
effectively,
but with something natural. Like they show him doing like some sort of like I don't know what to call it, but like leg exercises while face down, and then you see Rocky pulling Paulie on like a sled, so he's exercising the same muscles, and they're just to show like, now this is the American way to do things out in nature, not like those Soviets in their lab.
I mean, some of them are like more comparable than others. Like there's some of them where it's literally just Drago's going up, like they've got like a treadmill that angles up the way, so he's actually running uphill, and then Rocky's just actually running up a hill. Like some of them are really directly like parallels. But you know, they're both fun montages. Some of them are really funny. Once Adrian's there's one point where Rocky's literally, it's like a sled, it's like a Santa sled where or maybe like a carriage for a horse, but like all four other characters, Adrian, Duke, Paulie, and I think they've got like a Russian guy there who's been like cooking their food or something. He's there. They're all sitting in the sled or whatever it is, and Rocky's like lifting up the front of it with his shoulders. Like he's using all of their weight, right? In fact, there's one point where he's really trusting Paulie because he's got Paulie holding his legs as he's doing like sit-ups, but he's hanging off the edge backwards off the top of the barn. So it's like he's like doing sit-ups all the way. Like so instead of just sitting up to like 90 degrees. He's like bent all the way down that way at his knees and then sitting all the way up to like upright.
I want to point out, just me personally here.
Yes.
It would take me trusting someone a lot to trust them to like hold my legs down in such a precarious position.
Yes.
But knowing Paulie as I know Paulie.
Yes.
I would never trust Paulie to do this under any circumstances.
So I think the best thing to sort of show how far, I don't want to say how far we've come, because that sounds like a purely positive thing. Like, oh, look at how much advanced we've got. No, the best thing to say how more over the top and silly this franchise has gotten since Rocky 1 is I can just imagine the conversation. All right, Rocky 1's big training montage. It ended with Rocky scaling the steps in front of the museum. Really iconic moment. How can we top that? What can he get to the top of? And then someone just goes, a mountain. He climbs a mountain. Rocky runs up a mountain and he does the arms in the air at the top of the mountain, and then just the cherry on top, he goes, Drago!
Here's the thing though, the inspirational music's playing in the background, so it's not like, it doesn't seem like he's pissed off about it. It just seems like he's saying he's ready.
Yes.
But like any other music choice, this would be the like, I will murder you, Drago.
Well, except for one famous little shot in the middle of this montage where he looks at the photograph he's got of Drago on the mirror and he crumples it and it reveals the reflection of Stallone behind the photograph.
Once again, the subtext, both countries are the same. It's just a matter of where you're from. This movie's actually artistically genius.
Rocky's beard's growing out while he's out in the wilderness as well. So, like, you know, he's been doing all this hard training. We've had multiple montage songs. We're ready for the fight.
I just want to point out that final bit, though, of climbing up the mountain is they intercut that with him on the treadmill that just raises up and up and up. And we do see that's Drago's breaking point. He can't keep up. He can't run up the treadmill, but Rocky perseveres. He gets up the hill.
He also loses his KGB like tail when he starts running up the mountain, because they can't, you know, the car can't go up there. So then they try to chase and they fall immediately.
Yeah, because like you're trying to keep up with Rocky, and if there's one thing we've seen in these Rocky movies, it's how fast he can run when a crowd is following him.
So, I mean, it's all great fun. It's all good stuff. It's sillier for sure. But they wanted that visual of him standing on a mountain. So
they got it.
Yeah, they got it. It looks good. I can't deny it. So, like, the fight itself, obviously, Rocky, like, well, actually, I should mention there's a little bit with Paulie beforehand that's probably worth mentioning, where Paulie kind of says, look, I know I'm Paulie and I'm an idiot, but I just want to say that I actually really respect you, Rock. So, you know,
I love how that's like not even paraphrasing. That's like almost exactly what he said.
Yeah, I know I'm a piece of shit, but like,
yeah, like, honestly, if I can be anybody but Paulie, I'd like to be Rocky. But unfortunately, I'm Paulie.
And Adrian looks all proud, like, oh, Paulie said something nice to him. Finally,
yeah. It's
so rare he shows any sort of human emotion or like you know, intimacy. So
it only took 4 movies and a bunch of abuse on the in between, but whatever.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, the big thing I want to talk about the fight, obviously, I'm sure you'll have some stuff to say about the actual fighting, and it starts off similar to the Apollo one, where Drago's not really doing much, but then he starts beating the shit out of Rocky. But then, by the end of Rocky, or sorry, by the end of round two, by the end of Rocky 2, by the end of round 2, Rocky basically shows, no, I've got as much fight in me as you do, and I'm going to punch you in the head repeatedly. And in fact, actually, he draws blood, and they almost say the line, if he bleeds, we can kill it. Because
pretty straight up.
Because he's like, you drew blood, he's a man, he's not a machine, he's a man. And I thought, oh man, we've even got the Carl Weathers connection. It's so close to if it bleeds, we can kill it. I popped huge. But at the exact same time, it cuts to Drago, and he's like, he's a machine. He's not a man, he's a machine. But the thing I want to talk about here is not really the fighting itself. It's more around the fighting, because, and you can go back and talk about anything in the fight you want, but
yeah.
You've got the whole thing where the crowd hate Rocky. He comes out, they're all booing him because he's the American, he's the foreigner. They're booing him out the building. It's a hostile crowd. Mm-hmm. But through the montage of going through the rounds, the crowd start to like appreciate Rocky's charisma and like his fight, his determination. They start to root for him. Like he's a goddamn gladiator running over the Colosseum, right? You know, today I saw a slave become more powerful than the Emperor of Rome. That's what this is. And they've got, I think it was the premier, they said, the premier of the Soviet, like, government is in the attendance.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be Gorbachev. I think it's supposed to be Mikhail Gorbachev, but I couldn't tell you directly.
But doesn't he have the big birthmark? Isn't that, like, wouldn't they give him
I thought so. Yeah, but I don't know if they gave it to him.
I don't think they give him in this. If that's what it was meant to, because that's how you know it's him. Every time it's someone portraying that role, you see that big birthmark, you know it's him.
Right. Yeah. Hold on. I'm getting to the scene real quick where they all stand up and clap, but continue.
Yeah. So they do this thing where the crowd start to cheer, and this pisses off the guy that's been like sort of in charge of Drago's training, and he runs down and he gets in Drago's face. Listen to them. They're cheering for him. Our people are cheering for him. You're a loser. You're a disgrace. Finish him. And Drago picks him up by the throat whilst wearing a boxing glove, like he's got super strength.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And says, I fight for me and no one else. And he throws him away. And I think obviously you've got the whole thing with the crowd turn around and start rooting for Rocky, because he's like, which is kind of silly in and of itself that he's surrounded by a Soviet crowd and gets them to root for him.
Oh, yeah.
But the fact that, what I thought was really interesting about this fight is that get into the final round, when they go back into the middle of the ring, and they've had this running thing throughout the thing where they do the whole, the slapping the gloves together thing, where when Apollo did it earlier, it was like he was hitting metal, and he was like, oh shit, he didn't move. And earlier at the start of this match, in the first round, Drago did it to Rocky's gloves, and it was like, oh shit, that hurt. Here, they do it again, but this moment here where Drago comes in and says, till the end, and Rocky says till the end, it's almost like he's earned the respect of Drago before the final round.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's kind of interesting from like a plot or just a progression, making it a little bit different to the previous movies. Is like, no, this guy, like, you've earned his respect before the fight's even finished. So get into it's almost like all of the tension has already been dealt with. As far as these two guys are concerned, they've already sort of released most of that, and now it's just about proving who's the better fighter is. And that kind of leads into Rocky's whole speech afterwards, where he's basically like, hey, it's better that we fought it out here in the ring than 20 million people out fighting a war, or whatever he says afterwards. But I actually thought, okay, I mean, that part about the it's better us doing this instead of the war, whatever, right? I'm not going to say I like that much. But this idea that we've already done it, we've already like had the conflict play out, and we've already kind of realized that we're both really good at this. We've both kind of addressed the anger, and now it's just about finishing the match and both showing that we can go to the end. It's kind of interesting to me.
See, I see what you're saying there, but that's not how I initially read the scene.
Go on.
I initially read that line as more of a threat, because obviously you had him kill Apollo in the previous bout, but when he says to the end, Rocky doesn't say it back as far as I'm aware. It's just him saying it to him.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it's that sort of idea of like, this is going to end one way or another.
Yeah,
like,
I wasn't trying to indicate that when I said Rocky said it, I was more just the nod he gives or whatever kind of indicates that he's agreeing with what he said.
Right.
But I kind of took it that way because just based on what he just did with these like trainer dude, where he threw him away and like said, no, I fight for me, it kind of felt like he was standing up and saying, no, This is not about fighting for the country. This is not about fighting for your political regime. You know, Gorbachev's up there looking very like upset or whatever. You know, like it's like, oh, I'm so disappointed in this. Until of course the speech at the end, where even he starts clapping, like, oh man, Rocky's ended the Cold War. We're all one together now, one nation for the world.
That's all it took. No, I see what you're saying there, and I agree that, you know, he's no longer fighting for the Soviet Union. He's fighting for himself. But I took it more as a villain turn. I took it more as a thing of like, I'm no longer fighting for like honorable reasons or whatever. I'm fighting like because I want to win for me. Like this is a like I'm turning for blood sort of thing rather than for the glory of the country.
I read it the complete opposite way, where it's more like he's saying to the end, no matter who wins, right? You know, like, and ultimately he is the one that loses. But I don't think it's from this perspective of, you know, I'm going to kill you now. I think it's more just, you know, like to the end, no matter what. Like there's this fight, and I think part of it, and this is me reading into it a little bit, but this idea that he's been, you know, genetically trained in a lab, and they've had all this effort and stuff put into him, and he's been told he's a beast, he's told he's the best, he's a machine, and all the rest of it. Like, I do have to wonder, like, his opponents in Russia, when like they were feeding to him, like, were they real challenges? Is this maybe the first time he's actually, oh, this is actually a challenge. This is maybe the first real fight I might have ever had. Maybe I'm reading into it too much there, but
no, I think I agree, because obviously they said that he took out everybody in Russia, no problem. So I think this is the first fight that he's had that has been any sort of challenge.
15,
whether that's
15 guys that look like Polly.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I'm sure Russia actually threw their best at him because they wanted to show, like, you know, how strong he was. I don't think they ever just fixed the matches or whatever, gave him lightweights. But the reason that I thought this was more of a turn towards bloodthirstiness rather than let's do it for the, you know, honor of the game or whatever, is because of just how unhinged he was when attacking his coach, or whatever you want to call that guy, the political crony. And then, as we see in this final round here, like, he comes out guns blaring. Like, he's not just sitting there waiting for the punches anymore. He's going in, he's throwing jab after jab, head punch after head punch. He's going in for it. So I took this more as a turn for bloodthirstiness and saying, like, I'm going to win this no matter what, sort of thing. This is like me, especially, wasn't it at the end of round 14, like right before the end, where he just lifted Rocky up and like they continued fighting after the bell went off?
Yeah, that's the end of 14. I think, so, I mean, I get what you're saying. I just, for me, it was more like, he's not holding back still. He's still giving it everything he's got. And the whole, like, picking up the guy and throwing him away, it was more like he's breaking the shackles here. And like, this is not about you. This is all for me kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm curious to see, like, people in the comments, by all means, like, which side of this do you come down on? I kind of come down, it's not like I'm saying he's, like, suddenly this great heroic character all of a sudden. But I think getting into the final round, he is just fighting for himself, and he's, on some level, Rocky has earned his respect as a genuine, like, opponent and challenger.
Yeah. I would say the primary difference between our opinions is whether or not Rocky has earned his respect or whether or not he's earned his rage. Like, that's where we're really coming down on the difference here. Because I agree that, like, going into that final round, he's no longer doing it for the Soviet Union. But I think that the emotional impact behind it is different. Of the way I see it.
I don't think there's anything extra in the director's cut at this point, but it did mention that earlier on there's a bit more about his backstory and motivations for why he'd be a fighter. So I do wonder if that maybe helps shed some light on maybe how we can read his final moments here.
Don't get me wrong, I would love for your version to be the version that happens, because it just further enforces that, like, maybe they were trying to say something artistic about the two sides being the same.
I think that's the other thing. I think the way I took it is what fits the themes of the movie. It's what fits the theme of everything else that happens with the crowd cheering for Rocky, and this idea that, oh, we settled all of our dispute in the ring, so now the Cold War's over and we can all go home happy. Like, I'm not saying that's a good thing necessarily, but it fits the cheesy kind of message that it's going for at the end. Yeah,
and I would agree with that, but something in me just tells me that they wanted the villain to be cartoonishly evil, so that when Rocky beat him, there wasn't any sort of, like, middle ground here about, like, who was the good guy, who's the bad guy. It was Rocky triumphing over the evil of this monster who killed Apollo Creed.
I don't know. I don't know.
Comments sorted out.
I think I just disagree. I still think I read it that way, and I think the final round felt like it was more of a no, they're evenly matched, and they're both going in for the kill. They're both hitting heads repeatedly. Like that's all. I think that's what stood out to me most about the final round is that both of them were just repeatedly going for headshots. They're both trying to knock the other one out. And again, that was kind of interesting from like a layout of the fight kind of thing.
Yeah, I will say, Duke, I think specifically says like, okay, you got to win this by knockout. Is there any reason they said that he had to win this by knockout besides just the honor of not going to draw or points or anything?
No, I mean, maybe it's implying in him saying that he doesn't think Rocky will win if it goes to points. But
I mean, I wouldn't think so either if the Soviet judges are going to be the ones judging.
True. That's a very, very fair point.
Yeah.
I do think the ending's interesting and how it all wraps up. I was surprised that the end of the match music played when the 10 count happens.
Yeah.
Also, they established that his son's watching at home with two friends, which isn't really that worth mentioning, except for the fact that there's one little bit where his son says, "Hey, that's my dad," and one of the other kids goes, "Yeah, we know, we're not nerds," and then that's it.
As the damn robots standing in the background, as if contradicting what they said directly.
So I don't know. I that stuck out to me.
Yeah, it seems weird.
But yeah, everyone comes in. Rocky gets draped in an American flag, and they give him a mic, and he gives his infamous speech about if I can change, you can change, anyone can change. We did the fighting in the ring, so that's better than 20 million people at war. Blah 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 blah. And that's basically it. It freeze frames, and we get another pop song. We have to.
Rocky's literally draped in the American flag, fully making his transformation from Italian from the Bronx to all-American hero.
It really is a product of its times in every way possible, for better, for worse, and mostly for the better. Now, I think, time removed from it, I think people who have grown up with these movies existing can appreciate the silliness for what it is. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people who are older, who really like the first Rocky movie or two, have a lot more mixed feelings on 3 and 4 and think they're just shit because they're silly.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if people had those strong opinions. I love the silly ones, and they're not better than Rocky 1 by any stretch of the imagination, but they are very watchable and they're very entertaining.
I'm wholly in the boat there of you kind of just have to divorce 3 and 4 from the existence of 1 and 2 in terms of tone. Like, yes, they exist in the same franchise. Yes, the continuity, as long as you ignore the kid, is exactly the same. But like, it's such a different beast entirely. When you look back at Rocky 1, you see this slow, introspective, like, guy who's finally given a chance to do something with his life. He's always just been a washout, and like he manages to do something there and find love along the way. And then this one, he's fighting for the soul of America. It's like they're just totally different things, but they have their rights to exist for different reasons.
For sure. I'm glad they exist. I am, and I compare it a little bit to something, and not just this, but like the example I always bring up is Halloween, and Halloween is my favorite horror movie of all time. It is basically perfect, right? It is this great slasher movie, and then of course they made sequels. And I always view it as Halloween works at its best if the end of Halloween is the end of the story, right? And you just don't know where the shape went. And the same way that the end of Dirty Harry, that is the perfect ending to that story. He throws his badge away, that's it. The story's complete, the character story's done.
He doesn't immediately go to fish it back out again.
And everything that's in the sequels is kind of an optional if you want more. If you want the extended universe, maybe that's the best thing to compare it to, actually, is that the extended universe being the novels, the comic books, the tie-ins. If you view the sequels in the same way, and that they're not necessarily the ironclad canon where you have to think of all this stuff happening. No, the original exists on its own. That's the way it was made. That's how it was thought up. That's the end of the story. But if you want to go further with these characters and have some fun, it won't be quite as good. But if you want that fun stuff that comes after, you can enjoy that for what it is too. And that's kind of how I feel about Rocky, about some of the Halloween sequels, about even some of the Dirty Harry sequels, since I brought up that example as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's this weird thing where if you only get one movie, then, you'll have like fan fictions or stuff like that, like continuing the story maybe. But there's never the official thing. But once you make a single sequel, there's this idea that the story continues on past the original movie. And it's always like, you even past the end of the second one, you always have that nagging feeling in the back of your head of like, well, we already know the story continued past the first one. So what happens after the end of the second? And yes, there is a canon path that you can go down for anything except for the Terminator franchise, because that's entirely screwed up. But this, it's a strange situation where if you take the canon route down, you somehow start with Rocky 1 and end up at Paulie's Robot. And it doesn't feel like it fits. At a certain point, it does feel like it almost strayed into a fan fiction route where it's just throwing out random stuff. But
which is wild because Stallone's still writing. Stallone's been directing most of these movies. It's nuts, and it's kind of interesting that the same creator ends up in these places of doing these different things. But it's like I say, I think when I view the original movie, I'm not thinking of it as the first in this series of a big story. I think of it as a standalone movie. And then the sequels all come as a package that add on, or maybe some of them do, like depending on the franchise. But it's why when something like Halloween, where after a while they say, "Hey, we're just going to do a sequel to the original again, and we're going to ignore all the other sequels." Most people, even if you like some of those sequels, you're not that mad because, like, yeah, there was always a point where they went off the rails and like, oh yeah, the only way we can have a decent sequel again, if you want one, and we don't need one, but if you're going to have one, then the best option is just to do a sequel to the original or whatever jumping on point you decide to do creatively, right?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, and I think Rocky's kind of that way where I happen to like most of the sequels, and I've had a fun time going through them so far. Interesting. I'm saying that right before 5. Interesting little thing you might notice.
I wonder what's going to happen next week.
But yeah, it's just that thing where you have to kind of be able to separate it. And I think the tone, the quality of the story, the subtext or lack thereof it, like those things are what make it feel like they're a separate entity from the original film to some extent.
I'm going to make a callback to a very early season we did.
Oh, yeah.
Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
The first one it's still weird. It's still crazy to some extent, but it is ultimately a smaller story, and then it just keeps building and keeps getting more and more out there, and you kind of just have to accept it as its own beast at a certain point that's devoid of the original.
I get the comparison, but that's like a weird one to me because it started absolute crap and then it got turned into something that was somewhat entertaining by the time it got ridiculous enough. As opposed to starting with an Oscar-winning like drama.
I'm talking about it solely in terms of scale, not in terms of quality.
Sure. Okay. Sure. Yes, the scale of the stunts and the big spectacle action scenes definitely kept getting bigger after they started the franchise. All right, David, what was your scene of the movie?
When Paulie's robot told him how hot he was. That was, now honestly, now that I'm saying that as a joke, that was one of my biggest laughs, is Apollo just turning, seeing the robot enter the room, and then just having to resume the conversation afterwards. So I'm tempted to say that. But no, I think ultimately, as much as it is maybe a little bit of a cop-out here, I think the Hearts on Fire second training montage was just, it's kind of a one of the pinnacles of training montages, to the point where it's so 80s about it. And that's in the best possible way of describing it. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it, even just for a training montage. Like, theoretically, it's a skippable scene entirely, but ultimately it is one of the more fun and like, yeah, you did it sort of things. And then ending with Rocky climbing a mountain is just peak cheese. Love it. So I think I'm going to go with the Hearts on Fire training montage.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to go with. I feel like there's a lot of little options that I could take. There's a lot of little moments that I like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, interestingly, I think I'm going to go with the bit we disagree on, which is I'm going to go with the scene of Drago turning on his trainer and then kind of the tone that leads into the final round with. I think I think that's the most interesting choice the movie makes. Everything else is pretty by the numbers in terms of like sports movie. But I think that's the most interesting choice it makes is that moment. So,
no, that's fair. That's reasonable.
Regardless of whether or not you agree with my interpretation of it or David's, it's still the most interesting choice it makes in the movie. So
yeah.
All right, MVP of the movie.
So this one's a little bit tougher for me. My initial thought is Drago, just because he is such, like, you think Rocky Ford, you think Drago.
He's got presence.
All of the best lines in this movie come from him. All the quotable ones are from him. Like, despite the fact that he is essentially just a stone this entire time. He doesn't like do a whole lot until it gets to that turning point you were talking about. He still just is an enjoyable character. The only thing that I think is possibly going to fight him on that is Apollo himself. I think that this final bit, like showing him wanting this last chance at fame, and it really just gives a lot of character development for a character that was already developed very well over the past 3 movies. So I'm a little torn on that, but ultimately I think it's gonna win out for Drago. I think that he's being just more so the face of this movie is enough to take it out over a guy who I've already given credit to. I think he was MVP of like Rocky 2. I think he was a fantastic actor the whole way through the franchise up to this point. I think that he did a fantastic job, but Drago, for this movie specifically, is the MVP.
Yeah, I give it to Apollo last time. I think he was the MVP of 3, and I think there's an argument for 4 as well, for sure. Because I mean, the plot kind of revolves around him. Like, he's the one who wants to get into the whole thing in the first place, and it's kind of him leading to tragedy that motivates everything else for Rocky for the rest of the movie.
Right.
You could argue it's a little bit of a fridging, but I mean, it's 4 movies in. He's been pretty well developed.
Yeah, I was gonna say they created his character over a decade before this movie came out. I'm pretty sure it's not fridging by that point.
Well, it depends on the context, but like it did seem fitting that him wanting to go to glory again and him just underestimating one last opponent as his demise did feel somewhat fitting for the end of his character. I mean, what are my other options here? There's the robot.
Yep.
That's always an option. I like Duke in his small role. He obviously doesn't have a ton of lines, but he is memorable in the movie, and he does add a little bit of weight to a couple of moments.
Yeah, I think Duke would have had a fighting chance for me if they had shown him like actually training Rocky instead of it just being a montage. Yeah,
I was thinking that after their scene where he talks to him, I was hoping that he would become more of a character that talks to Rocky more. Right. I still like him in his presence. It's a testament to the actor that he's as memorable as he is with what little he gets to do. But that said, though, I think I'm probably just going to say Drago as well. I don't think anything else tips over quite for this one. And, Dolph Lundgren is a very strong presence. I like him as a... It's weird to say as an actor, because it's not like he gives, like, award-winning performances necessarily. But in the movies that I like him in, he's very good at being, Showdown in Little Tokyo. I loved him in that. He was great, right? He was great in that role. He's great as the villain in Universal Soldier. He's great in a bunch of... I think he's good at this. So,
yes.
I'll go Drago as well. Or I guess I'm saying Dolph Lundgren rather than Drago, I suppose, as a character.
Well, yeah. That's fair.
Because you could distinct between that when you're picking MVP. It could be a character, it could be a person that's an actor, or even someone behind the camera, potentially. Like, if you think the only thing that elevates the movie is the music, then you can pick the composer. Like, that can be the MVP. Noted.
I don't know if I'll take advantage of it, but noted.
Yeah. I almost wanted to joke and say the music supervisor is the MVP of the movie.
Sony Columbia Soundtracks, MVP.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize one more time. Gorbachev himself stands up and applauds Rocky at the end of the movie.
Which like I get from a theming perspective of they want to show like, the two countries come together, but like ultimately what it ends up being is America rocks so hard that all that Soviet Russia needed to see was a like American giving his all, and like there you go. That's it. That's all they needed. That's the only thing they were missing.
Yep. They realized that their cold, emotionless, like national anthem, as everyone just standing salutes, is nothing compared to, the dancing and the flag waving of Apollo Creed's entrance earlier.
And from this day on, the Soviet we're flooded with Rocky pinball machines and Rocky merchandise that obviously existed, as we saw in Rocky 3.
All right, what are you rating Rocky 4?
Before I rate it, I just want to say one thing that I've been doing for this entire review. No one can hear my desktop audio. I have been listening to Hearts on Fire on repeat this entire time just to see what would happen to my psyche. And ultimately, I feel a little bit pumped up. I think it's been a good experience.
Your audacity better not be recording that, you prick.
The largest slap of a copyright infringement you've ever seen. 100 straight minutes of Hearts on Fire. No, so for me, rating wise, I think that I technically, from like a construction level of the script and such, I think this is weaker than Rocky 3. I think the fact that you take full pauses for like the driving montage, the fact that Paulie's robot exists in any meaningful capacity, all of these are just signs of a bad script. But ultimately, I think that I still enjoyed this movie more. I think that it crossed over that line into dumb fun far enough that it made up for a lot of the stuff that was lacking in the script. So I know that this rating is usually supposed to be more about like the technical stuff of like whether we think it's a good movie, but I think that the fun just, it, no matter what, it's going to get you to ignore some level of mistakes that it makes just by sheer enjoyment factor. So I think ultimately, despite this being technically a worse film, I'm going to give it a higher rating than Rocky 3 and give it a 7.5.
Oh, very interesting. Also higher than Rocky 2.
Yes.
You gave that a 7 as well. Yeah, I think, I gave the last one a 7.5, and I think I'm going to give this one a 7.5.
Okay.
I think it, obviously, I'm not saying it's the exact same. I'm saying that there's some of the things that it loses are a negative. I think Rocky 3 does have the stronger script. There's a little bit more going on in there. I think the friendship between Rocky and Apollo developing is a little bit better overall as a story. But I think what this gains instead, in terms of cheesy fun factor, kind of makes up for it to ultimately land me on the same rating. So I am going 7.5 as well. So
okay. And then the question is, if Rocky 3 makes the cut and Rocky 2 does not make the cut, does Rocky 4 make the cut?
Rocky 4 makes the cut.
Yep, I don't think that's arguable. I had too much fun with this.
Yeah. And Rocky 2 was cutting it close, and it was a high cutting it close. So, I mean, we're effectively saying if the first 4 are absolutely worth having a look. See,
man, we keep on baiting how bad this next one's gonna be. I can't wait to see if it's true.
The funny thing is I don't even remember all that well. I just remember the general feeling. I couldn't tell you like how. Like I might be pleasantly surprised next week. I don't know.
Well, let's see. If we keep on building, and this one was Rocky fighting the Soviets, the next one has to be Rocky fighting aliens.
Yes, Martians.
That's the only way to keep building. That's it.
Yes. So
turns out Rocky's robot was actually picked up from a Martian spaceship, and they're coming back for it, and they're coming for war.
All right. So obviously next week is Rocky 5 on the show. No surprises there. You can, of course, get bonus content from us over in patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can help support the show and help keep the episodes coming. Wouldn't be able to do this as often as we do without that support via Patreon or YouTube memberships or whatever. But some of the bonus content you can get is the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection. So that's kind of your smarter, artsy-fartsy, prestigious films where we can try and like analyze and maybe fail miserably, but try our bestest to do so. And then Extra Reels, which is the tier up, is a show where we review some of the worst things ever made. We are talking Neil Breen, we are talking Miami Connection, we are talking... I mean, sometimes so bad they're amazing, don't get me wrong, but the last episode was Madam Web, which actually guest starred Tim from Screams After Midnight as a bonus voice. So if you want 2+ hours of us dissecting the first modern movie that we've done on Extra Reels, then you can find that over.
Pete, I'm wondering your definition on modern, because I do remember Paradise Motel was 2022.
Okay, first modern movie that was released in theaters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good distinction there. I love pulling out Paradise Motel because I just see that single 0 floating in the sea.
That was me, right? I give that a 0.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I had the dignity to give it a 0.5.
Dignity. Why do you think that gives you dignity? Maybe the 0 gives me dignity.
It gave the movie dignity.
Okay, all right.
It was like, look, we got half a star, guys. That's all we needed.
So go check out Patreon for the bonus things. Check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi movie podcast. Next week we got Rocky 2, or not Rocky 2, RoboCop 2 coming.
Yes.
But last week we did the brand new release of Alien Romulus. So if that sounds like fun, you can also check out our thoughts on the previous Alien movies and a bunch of other stuff. You'll never see the Alien franchise on Collector's Cut because it's sci-fi. We have another show for that. So go and check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment. But yeah, that'll do it. That's the show, everyone. Unless I'm forgetting something. I was about to say David's going to do his homework movie, but that's an A segment, not a Collector's Cut segment. So
if you want to hear my opinion on 2 movies at once, got to check out the other show.
Yes. But that is us. So thank you once again for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies. And if you can get it.
There's something you can do here, but I don't know it either.
I shouldn't have phrased it that way. I know what I wanted to go into, but I started it the old way, and I shouldn't have.
All right.
So I'll just
take 2.
I'm going to retake
restart.
that.
All right.
Right? Keep watching movies, and if I can change, then you can change. Anybody can change.